We are stranded in Asia, like tens of thousands and probably soon hundreds of thousands of people around the world. Our flights have been canceled by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. And obviously, we are not the people who are most affected by this. My thoughts are with anyone in the region, the people of Iran who will now have to fight for their freedom, the people in the Gulf who are affected by this and living through some very scary times. And in addition to that, there are people all over the world, and I think a lot of people who don't even know just how impacted they will be yet, who are also affected by what's going on when it comes to travel. Because initially when this happened, I thought, well, this won't be good for travel to or from the Middle East, that's for sure. Connecting traffic will also be impacted, but I didn't think one step further to go, actually, this is going to impact the entire world, whether you live in South America, North America, Australia, New Zealand, Northeast Asia. If you are traveling in the coming month, this is going to have massive implications. And I wanted to go over some of my initial thoughts on that in this random ad hoc video. I'm trying not to really edit it that much. I just want to share my thoughts on what's going on and maybe some advice that could help you if you're in a similar situation to me and Oscar. So I guess first, let's wind back a bit and see how Oscar and I ended up in this situation of being stranded, what we're going to do about it, and what the next steps are. So basically, on February 28th, Oscar and I were supposed to be flying Singapore Airlines to Dubai for a review on their 777. So we were flying from Bali to Dubai on the same ticket with Singapore Airlines with a connection in Singapore. Lo and behold, that was the day that strikes started. So we landed in Singapore on the 28th around 3:30 p.m. And the thing is, Singapore Airlines daily flight to Dubai leaves at about 2:30. So we were taking that flight about 24 hours later. We booked a long connection to see one of our best friends here in Singapore. So I went on Flight Radar, as I always do, to check how's the flight doing. This is not our flight, but it's still interesting to see how the day before flight does. And it hadn't left yet, which is very uncharacteristic for Singapore Airlines for a flight to not have left the gate and not have any sort of announcement an hour after its scheduled departure. So I thought that's a bit weird. We clear immigration, we go to our grab, and still there's no updates. The aircraft or the flight does not say it's delayed, but it hasn't left the gate. So I'm like, wow, lucky we're not on this flight today, huh? Tomorrow it'll be smooth sailing. And then of course, when we're in the taxi, Oscar opens the New York Times and the headline is, "The US strikes Iran." Then we started figuring, you know what? Our flight tomorrow is probably going to be canceled, but there was no official announcement. So we went into our hotel. We spent a few hours there. Actually, we're doing a review of that hotel for my channel, Nonstop Vlogs. At about 6 p.m., I think, local Singaporean time, our flight for the next day was canceled. And as far as I'm aware, Singapore Airlines was one of the first airlines to not only not depart for their flight to Dubai and decide to be conservative with that, but also to cancel the following day's flights. Singapore Airlines is usually a very good benchmark when it comes to safety. They're one of the first airlines to act if they think something will be unsafe. Not sound like a propagandist, but that's how I feel about Singapore. So we were like, all right, plans are changing. We are not going to Dubai after all. I also felt like I was getting a bit sick. I'm still kind of in that or recovering from that. So we were like, let's just stay put in Singapore, let me recover, and then we'll figure out what to do. So we've been here for, I guess this is our 4th day in Singapore now, still trying to recover and figure out next steps. But for now, Singapore Airlines has canceled their flights for a week to Dubai. So they will not be flying until March 7th. We have some hotel stays booked there, which luckily we were able to cancel besides one, which I'm still trying to get a refund for because I'm like, these are quite extraordinary circumstances, but that's another topic. We've been looking at going somewhere else in Southeast Asia for now, but our families in Sweden have of course been like, guys, come home, come home. You can stay for free as you usually do. It will be a perfect opportunity to spend time with family, all that. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's think about that. We obviously knew we're not doing this Dubai thing anymore. Asked Singapore Airlines to cancel that ticket and refund the unflown portion, which they did. ended up getting a refund of about 60% of each of the ticket values because that was a cash ticket. So that was fine, whatever. But when I went in today to try to find a ticket to Europe is when I realized something pretty scary actually. And that's what made me want to make this video, because the Middle Eastern carriers have become a center of global aviation. Everything revolves around thousands of passengers every day connecting in Doha, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Bahrain, etc. When these hubs are suddenly removed from the equation, everything falls apart. Aviation is not what it was before those airlines existed. If you think about one Emirates A380, it's carrying about 80 or 90 first and business class passengers in total. Then you have premium economy, 56 passengers per A380, and then you have hundreds of passengers in economy. Qatar Airways has 40 odd business class seats on most of their long haul aircraft. The smaller ones have about 30, and then you have economy. So if you think about all those aircraft being removed, obviously just in one day, there are now thousands of passengers who don't have anywhere to go. And if you look at just the direct capacity between a city like Singapore and London, there's not 1,000 business class seats in a week. We're talking about all the people who already booked British Airways and Singapore Airlines, and now you're trying to add all the people who were supposed to fly between Singapore and London and actually had nothing really to do with the Middle East besides their connection there, trying to get seats on those flights as well. Then people fly through the Middle East from the US to Southeast Asia. So even on itineraries where you don't necessarily think of this as a key market for Middle Eastern airlines, you have so many people who are now like, okay, well, now I need to fly across the Pacific instead of going through the Middle East to get home from Singapore to the US. So that adds more demand. So you can see how demand is compounding here, right? But what I did not expect is when I went to search, so one search I did was Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, and Singapore to Europe. Do you want to guess how many days you currently have to wait to even be able to book a ticket between Asia and Europe? Pretty much 2 weeks from Southeast Asia if you're hoping to get on a direct flight. There are some more niche options. You could potentially fly through Central Asia. You could try to go up to Korea and fly from there, but keep in mind that every single market is affected by the loss of these Middle Eastern airlines temporarily. And we don't know if they'll be back fully operating within a few days or a week or 2 weeks, but regardless, even if it's just, let's say, a week, the effect that that will have on capacity and the backup of capacity that those airlines will have to deal with at this point will now stretch on at least through March. So we're talking sold out flights on most direct or even the only available options in a lot of markets already. And you can expect that with each day of Middle Eastern cancellations, that is only going to get worse. So part of the reason I wanted to make this video is to highlight the fact that leaving your home right now, if you don't have to, is probably not a good idea, even if you don't have anything to do with the Middle East, or you're not going to one of these markets where it's absolutely packed because of Middle Eastern cancellations. The thing is, if your flight gets canceled, let's say you're going to Japan from Europe. If your flight for some reason goes tech and it gets canceled, or you miss your flight, for example, you could end up being stranded not until, oh, the next flight is available in 8 hours. Your next available flight might be in 1 or 2 weeks. And as the days go on, as I said, this is probably only gonna get worse. There are a few seats on some days in economy, but even those are selling fast. So the amount of backup options that you'll have at the last minute will be virtually non-existent, meaning that you're trapped. I'm getting really unpleasant flashbacks to the beginning of COVID. Obviously, we don't expect the whole aviation industry to shut down, thank goodness, but there is a similar amount of uncertainty about what lies ahead for obviously geopolitically and global safety wise, which again is so much more important than any trip, whether it's business or leisure. At the end of the day, millions and millions of people travel every month. So for millions of people to see some sort of ripple effects from this is incredibly significant, and every airline around the world is seeing implications because of this, whether it's airspace closures, a huge surge in bookings, whether direct or from other airlines rebooking. And when there's overcapacity, when there's overbookings, that also creates a huge burden for each airline to try to sort that out and how to get all their passengers to their final destinations without basically any rebooking alternatives. Keep in mind, and this is one of the areas where Europe is just so amazing. If you're in Europe and you are covered by EU 261 because your flight has been canceled at the last minute, that is the EU regulation protecting you in the case of flight delays and cancellations. This also applies in the UK under UK 261. The airline is obliged to take care of you, not provide compensation in this case because this is an extraordinary circumstance, but they should help you with hotels and they should help you with meals. I question how long that could go on if this potentially continues for a few weeks or months, but when it comes to any sort of long-haul international travel, even in regions where you don't think you'll be affected, such as Australia to the US, everywhere, we will be seeing huge impacts of this. And I think it's best to know about that beforehand before you decide to leave home and go on a trip. For me, it was really shocking to see the extent to which flights are booked out so far in advance at this point, not just a few days, but a few weeks. If you have any sort of last minute business travel or leisure trips that you are planning on taking, keep this in mind as well, because if you go to check flights now, the selection probably will not be the same as it was last time you checked, and your trip might be impacted. So this is going to have huge implications on business travel, especially, which is often booked at the last minute. Alex Macheras, my podcast co-host, and I will be having a very long, in-depth discussion on this tomorrow on our #1 ranking aviation podcast On Air with Dan and Alex. So on Wednesday, depending on when you're watching this, tune in to hear our in-depth discussion with more tips and advice. There will be a new review from me in a few days, but for now, my thoughts are with all the people directly impacted safety-wise by this. We obviously hope for a swift resolution as soon as possible. So until I see you in the next video, as always, fly safe and stay safe.